think we'd better get started before we get looked in. It's my great pleasure to welcome you all here this evening on behalf of the Friends of the University of Sydney Library and the Macquarie Dictionary. My name's Anne Bell. I'm the University Librarian here at Sydney, and I'm speaking on behalf of Deborah Perrick, who's the sort of chair of the Friends of the Library, but unfortunately isn't able to make this evening's event due to personal reasons. As I say, it's my great pleasure to welcome you, and of course to welcome our guest. And I know from previous experience when Les has done these sessions for us how always a well-attended like today and always hugely entertaining, and also a lot for us to learn from what Les chooses to share with us. It's a real privilege to welcome Les and yourselves, of course, and it's one of those rare occasions when it's true to say Les needs no introduction. But just a few snippets. Obviously, he's a literary giant here in Australia and indeed internationally. You've had volumes of poetry published since 1965, I believe, so that's nearly 50 years, nearly half a century.
That was Jeff Lehman and I together. It took two of us to be one fella in this.
And in 1989, Les was awarded the Order of Australia for his contribution to literature. So really, a towering literary giant, and it's a huge pleasure to have him here today. But one of the things I'd like to share with you is a piece from the internet, of course, described as Les Murray for beginners. The poet who is most closely associated in the popular imagination with present-day Australia is Les Murray. He's probably the only living poet whose name would be known by the man on the street. A great many Australians would recognise his face if he walked past them. He is like Australia itself in that he makes few concessions to the formalities of life. He has written and spoken of his mild Asperger's syndrome and periods of serious depression. He eccentrically combines the deceptive simplicity of the idiot savant with the sophistication of the scholar and the introspection of a saint. Add to these a farmer, a son, a parent and a husband, and you have at least understood a fraction of the complexity that adds up to Les Murray the poet. Non-Australians, like myself, are sometimes alienated by poems of Murray's which seem to them to use a private language. And so they do, but it's a private language to which many Australians feel they have the key. His words are reduced to a strong minimum. He cuts to the chase. He digs into his own mind to find his poetic language. He conducts very little conversation with what Howard Bloom calls the literary canon. He is an outsider like William Blake. His words seem to splatter like the paint of Jackson Pollock, and yet each word is deliberately chosen. It's my huge pleasure to welcome Jackson Pollock, literary canon, and the saint all in one. And I'm very like to go with Sue Butler from the Macquarie Dictionary.
And what I can add, what that writer doesn't mention, is Les's attachment to dictionaries, and to Macquarie Dictionary in particular. Almost from the moment the dictionary was published, I think I've been getting postcards from Les. The postcard being Les's favourite means of communication. A quick postcard picked up at a cafe somewhere and sort of sent on with advice about words that really ought to be in the dictionary. And this has developed into a fully fledged relationship, if you like, with the dictionary, because Les is now a fellow of the University of Sydney, attached to the dictionary, and so he turns up once a month to trawl through origins of American expressions that have come into Australian English, to look at Aboriginal English and the overlap with rural Australian English, to look at all sorts of things that we think add to the wealth of information that's in the dictionary and round out the history of Australian English for us. So this is a great pleasure and a great boost to the information that is provided in the dictionary. As it happens, over the weekend, I tidied out some files and I found this letter that Les had written, dated 5th of the 2nd, 1990, saying, "Dear Sue, this is by way of a plea for an older alternate spelling," note that useful alternate spelling of the item given in the Macquarie and the big OED as accordion only, spelt I-O-N. And so Les, they say that he grew up on the E-O-N spelling, and when he came to write a poem called Accordion Music, it was spelt E-O-N. So he sent me the poem as evidence for his spelling, and being a good researcher, he sent me a catalogue of accordions from a shop in Sydney. Beautiful accordions they are, and the one in the centre, that's absolutely amazing. So who could deny the evidence? We immediately added the variant spelling to the dictionary, and so life passed on and we wait for the next instalment. I have asked Les to read this poem that he sent to the dictionary as proof, to open the proceedings.
Thanks, Sue. I feel well and truly welcomed. I got my education in Fisher Library. Mind you, it was a Gothic place then.
Can I just look this behind you?
Right. Yeah, this was written on the occasion of my father's 80th birthday. It's called Accordion Music, Accordion Music. A backstrapped family Bible that consoles virtue and sin, for it opens top and bottom and harps both out and in. It shuffles a deep pack of cards, flirts an inverted fan, and stretches to a shelf of books about the pain of man. It can play the sob in Jesus, the cavernous bastard's note. It can wheedle you for cigarettes or drop a breathy quote. It can conjure Parasup or home, unclench a chin-strapped jaw, but it never sang for a knob's baton or lured the boys to war. Underneath the lone street light outside a crossroads hall, where bullocks pass and dead girls waltz and mental gum trees fall, two brothers play their plough-rain days and long-gone spoon-licked nights. The fiddle stitching through this quilt lifts up in singing flights. The other's mourning, meaning tune goes arching up and down as life undulates like a heavy snake through the rocked accordion. Yeah, it was a good party. Most of us went home, being weaklings of the late 20th century. We went home around about 1 in the morning, but my father and his brother and a few other diehards were out at 3 in the morning, still playing music, standing on the gravel, under the one street light of our district, and just getting into stride. Yeah. I'm going to cover a lot of material, so a lot of the longer poems I used to write, I won't be able to fit them in, but a few, but mostly shorter poems. This is from a sequence of poems called Machine Portraits with Pendant Spaceman. And I'll read two of them. The bulldozer stands short as a boot on its heel-high ripple soles. It has toe-capped stumps aside all day, scuffed earth and trampled rocks, making a hobnailed dike downstream of raw clay shoals. Its work will hold water. The man who bounced high on the box seat exercising levers would swear a full frontal orthodox oath to that. First he shaved off the grizzled scrub with that front-end safety razor supplied by the School of Hard Knocks. Then he knuckled down and ground his irons properly. They copped many a harsh rub. At knock-off time, spilling thunder, he surfaced like a sub. That's an Australian one. Here's a machine that's purely exotic. How many metal bra and trumpet flaring film extravaganzas underlie the progress of the Space Shuttle's ground transporter vehicle across McAdam Surface, Florida? atop on-creeping house-high panzers, towering dry dock and ocean liner decks, there perches a gridiron football field in gradual motion. It is the God platform. It sustains the bridal skyscraper of liquid cool, and the rockets borrowed from the Superman, and the bricked aeroplane of Bust Out and Return, all vertical, conjoined and myth-huge, approaching the starred gantry where human lightning will crack, extend and vanish upwards from this caravan. That was written because I learned that to move the ground transporter vehicle, you couldn't put down cement or asphalt or anything. It had to be on gravel because it was too heavy for anything else. Not because I ever lived there, but I kind of like this poem. It's called Nocturne. Brisbane, night gathered far away, estuarine imaginary city, of houses towering down one side, of slatted lights seen under leaves. Confluence of ranginess with lush. Brisbane of rotogravure memory, approached by web lines of coke and grit, by sleepers racked in corridor trains. Weatherboard incantatory city of the Timber Duchess, the Strap Port in Auchenflower and Fortitude Valley, and bottle tops spat in Vulture Street. Greatest of the flood time towns that choked the dictionary with silt and hung a navy in the tropic gardens. Brisbane on the steep green slope to war, brothel humid headquarters city where commandos and their allies fought down cafe stairs, built buckle and boot, and once with a rattletrap green gun. In midnight nets, in mango bombings, Brisbane storied and cable fixed above your rum river, farewell and adieu in marble on the hill of Toowong. By golfing pockets, by deep squared pockets, night heals the bubbled tar of day, and the crab moon rising reddens above Brisbane, rotating far away. If I remember rightly, the first edition of the Macquarie Dictionary was drowned in
I was just going to say that you should explain the dictionary.
Yeah, I just remember that as I was reading the poem. The Brisbane flood came and got the Macquarie Dictionary, and they had to do it again.
It's not quite true, but it's a good story. Suddenly the flood came, but with the cards were high and dry.
We've been climbing up ever since. I went to Sydney races. There along the rails, all snap brims and cold eyes, flanked by senior police and other stony men with their eyes in a single crease, stood the entire government of New South Wales. Watching Derby ply the whip all for show over this fast colt. It was young and naive. It was heading for the post in a bolt, while the filly carrying his and all the inside money strained to come level. Too quick for the stewards to note him, Derby slipped the colt a low lash to the scrotum. It checked, shocked, stumbled, and the filly flashed by. As he came from weighing in, I caught Derby's eye and he said, "Get out of it, mate," quite conversationally. Yeah, Brisbane always reminds me of war, because a lot of uncles and people like that in my early childhood passed through there on the way to places from which luckily most of them returned. This is called The Ballad of the Barbed Wire Ocean. No more rice pudding, pink coupons for Plume, smokes under the lap for aunts, 4 running black boots beside a red sun, flash wireless words like advance. When the ocean was wrapped in barbed wire, terror radiant up the night sky. Exhilaration raced flat out in squadrons. Mum's friends took off sun hats to cry. Starting south of the then world with new showground rifles being screamed at and shown. For a giggle suit, 3 feeds a day and no more plans of your own. It went with some swagger till God bless you, Tom, and Daddy come back at the train. Or a hoot up the gangways for all the girls, and soon the coast fading in rain. But then it was flared screams from blood bundles whipped rolling as iron bombs keened down, and the insect-eyed bombers burned their crews alive in off-register Hannah and Brown. In steep ruins of rainforest, pre-affluent thousands, apes scuttling mixed sewage with blood, and fear in the poem played vodka to morals, fear jolting to the mouth like cud. It was sleep-atop supplies, it was pick-handle, it was coming against the wall in tears. Sometimes it was factory banter, stoking jerked breech blocks and filing souvenirs, or miles-wide humming cattle yards of humans, or oiled ship fires burning in ice. Rag wearers burst as by huge war bond coins, girls' mouths full of living rice. No one came home from it. Phantoms smoked 200 daily. Ghosts held civilians at bay. Since war turns beyond strut and adventure to keeping what you've learned and shown, what you've approved and what you've done, from ever reaching your own, this is died for, and nihil and nonsense feed on it day after day. The tin wash dish. Blank poverty, dank poverty. Its pants wear through at fork and knee. It warms its hands over burning shames, refers to its fate as them and he, and delights in things by their hard names, rag and toe jam, feed and poor. Don't guts that down, there ain't no more. Dank poverty, rank poverty. It hums with a grim fidelity like wood rot with a hint of orifice. Wet newspaper jammed in the gaps of artifice and disgusts us into a fierce loyalty. It's never the fault of those you love. Poverty comes down from above. Let it dance chairs and smash the door. It arises from all that went before, and every outsider's the enemy. Jesus Christ turned this over with his stick, and knights and philosophers turned it back. Rank poverty, lank poverty. Chafe in its crutch and sores in its hair. Still, a window's clean if it's made of air, not webby silver like a sleeve. Watch out if this does well at school and has to leave and longs to leave. Someone, sometime, will have to pay. Shave with toilet soap, run to flesh, astound the nation, rule the army. Still you wait for the day you'll be sent back where books or toys on the floor are rubbish, and no one's allowed to come and play because home calls itself a shack, and hot water crinkles in the tin wash dish. I had a habit at one time of writing long sequences of poems, so walking around a subject and writing a number of poems about it. And there was one I called Translations from the Natural World, about animals, sort of getting inside the hide of animals. I was crazy at the time. I had depression. I thought anywhere's better than this, so I crept into the souls of creatures. This one's a lyrebird, the best of all mimics. Lyrebird. Lyre made of leaf litter, quivering ribby in shim, hen-sized under frou-frou, chinks in a cliff display him or her, dancing in mating time or out, and in any order. Tailed mimic ion sent to intrigue the next recorder, I mew catbird, I saw crosscut, I howl she-dingo, I kink forest hush, distinct with bellbirds, warble magpie garble, link cattlebill with kettleboil. I rank duck's cranky presidium or simulate a triller like a real mirrored lyrical to a rim. I ring dim, I alter nothing, real to real only I sing. Garn the crane and gun the chainsaw, urban thing to being. Screaming woman owl and human talk, EDI, I don't know. The miming is all of I. Silent, they are a function of wet forest, cometary lyrebirds. Their flight lifts them barely a semitone. You got to have a bit of a trained tongue to pronounce that one. I did stumble over the human language there, but the one thing they can't imitate, they can't get words. They can make the sound of language, but not the words of language. The other one is a bit sadder. They're called the cows on killing day. A lot of cattle are slaughtered, of course, in slaughterhouses, but there's a lot of them privately still killed more or less like this, you know. All me are standing on feed. The sky is shining. All me have just been milked. Teats all tingling still from that dry, toothless sucking by the chilly mouths that gasp loudly in, and never breathe out. All me standing on feed move the feed inside me. One me smells of needing the bull, that heavy urgent me, the back climber, who leaves me humped, straining, but light and peaceful again, with crystalline moving inside me. Standing on wet rock being milked assuages the calf sorrow in me. Now the me who needs mounts on me, hopping to signal the bull. The tractor comes trotting in its grumble. The heifer human bounces on top of it, and cud comes with the tractor. Big rolls of tight, dry feed. Lucerne, clovers, buttercup, grass that's been bitten but never swallowed, yet is cud. She walks up over the tractor and down it comes, roll on roll, and all me following, eating it and dropping the good pats. The heifer human smells of needing the bull human and is angry. All me look nervously at her as she chases the dog me dream of horning dead, our enemy of the light loose tongue. Me a jam him in his squeals. Me facing every way, spreading out over feed. One me is still in the yard, the place skinned to feed. Me, old and sore-boned, little milk in that me now, licks at the wood. The oldest bull human is coming. Me in the peed yard. A stick goes out from the human and cracks like the whip. Me shivers and falls down with the terrible, the blood of me coming out behind an ear. Me, that other me, down and dreaming in the bare yard. All me come running. It's like the hot part of the sky that's hard to look at. This that now happens behind wood in the raw yard. A shining leaf like off the bitter gum tree is with the human. It works in the neck of me, and the terrible floods out swamped and frothy. All me make the roar, some leaping stiff-kneed, trying to horn that worst horror. The wolf at the calves is the bull human, horn the bull human. But the dog and the heifer human drive away all me. Looking back, the glistening leaf is still moving. All of dry old me is crumpled like the hills of feed, and a slick me like a huge calf is coming out of me. The carrion stinking dog, who is calf of human and wolf, is chasing and eating little blood things the humans scatter, and all me run away over smells toward the sky. We've got a son who's autistic. I mean, he's a proper autistic. He's more than me, you know. And bringing him up, he's now 35, and I wrote this poem when he was 15, about the first and hardest 15 years of his education. It's called It Allows a Portrait in Line Scan at 15. He retains a slight margin accent from the years of single phrases. He no longer hugs to disarm, it is gradually allowing him affection. It does not allow proportion. Distress is absolute, shrieking and runs him at frantic speed through crashing doors. He likes cyborgs, their taciturn power with his intonation. It still runs him around the house alone in the dark, cooing and laughing. He can read about soils, populations and New Zealand. On neutral topics he's illiterate. Arnie Schwarzenegger is an actor. He isn't a cyborg really, is he, Dad? He lives on 40 acres with animals and trees and used to draw it continually. He knows the map of Earth's fertile soils and can draw it freehand. He can only lie in a panicked shout, "Sorry, I didn't do it," warding off conflict with humans and himself. When he ran away constantly, it was to the greengrocers to worship stacked fruit. His favourite country was the Ukraine. It is nearly all deep, fertile soil. Giggling, he climbed all over the dim Freudian psychiatrist who told us how autism resulted from refrigerator parents. When asked to smile, he photographs a rictus smile on his face. It long forbade all naturalistic films. They were adult movies. If they, that is he, are bad, the police will put them in hospital. He sometimes drew the farm amid Chinese or Balinese rice terraces. When a runaway, he made uproar in the police station, playing at 3 times adult speed. Only animated films were proper. Who Framed Roger Rabbit then authorised the rest. Phrases spoken to him, he would take as teaching and repeat. When he worshipped fruit, he screamed as if poisoned when it was fed to him. A one-word first conversation, Blaine. Yes, Blaine, that's right, baby. Blaine. He has forgotten nothing and remembers the precise quality of experiences. It requires rulings. Is stealing very playing up as bad as murder? He counts at a glance, not looking, and he has never been lost. When he ate only nuts and dried fruit, words were for dire emergencies. He knows all the breeds of fowls in the counties of Ireland. He'd begun to talk, then returned to babble, then silence. It withdrew speech for years. When he took your hand, it was to work it as a multi-purpose tool. He is anger's mirror and magnifies any near him, raging it down. It still won't allow him fresh fruit or orange juice with bits in it. He swam in the midwinter dam at night. It had no rules about cold. He was terrified of thunder and finally cried, "It angry." He grilled an egg he'd broken into bread. Exchanges of soil knowledge are called land talking. He lives in objectivity. I was sure Bell's palsy would leave my face only when he said it had begun to. Bantering questions about girlfriends caused a terrified look and blocked ears. He sometimes headed the farm in a furrowed American Midwest. Eye contact, Mum, means he truly wants attention. He dislikes eye contact. He is equitable and kind and only ever a little jealous. It was a relief when that arrived. He surfs, bowls, walks for miles. For many years he hasn't trailed his left arm while running. I got to get smart, looking terrified into the years. I got to get smart. Dream Barbed. Streaming, a hippo surfaces, like the head of someone lifting with still entranced eyes from a lake of stanzas. This is a queer little poem. It's a sort of, it is a poem, but it's more or less a set of lines that are not necessarily all that closely bound together. It's a heap, a timber stack, if you like, of poem. Sound bites. Attended by thousands, the sun is opening. It's a body prayer, a shower, you're in touch all over, renewing, enfolded in a wing. My sorrow, only 95,000 welcomes left in Scots Gaeldom now. Poor cultures can afford poetry, wealthy cultures can't. Sex is the ever-appeased class system that defeats utopias. But I bask in the pink that you're in, repeat. One day, as 2 continents are dividing, the whole length of a river turns salt. What's sketched at light speed, thunder must track, bumbling for miles. If love shows you its terrible face before its beautiful face, you'll be punished. People watching with their mouths an increasing sky birth of meteors. Y chromosomes of history, apologise to your exes. You think that was confused nonsense. This one's, I have no idea myself what this one's about, but I'm very fond of it. It's called The Images Alone. Scarlet as the cloth draped over a sword, white as steaming rice, blue as Lucian Altia. Old curried towns, the frog in its green human skin. A ploughman walking his furrow as if in irons, but as at a whoop of young men running loose in brick passages, there occurred the thought like instant stitches all through crumpled silk, as if he'd had to leap to catch the bullet. A stench like hands out of the ground. The willows had like beads in their hair, and Panemunda grunted the dentist drill. Panemunda. Fowls went on typing on every corn key. Green kept crowding the pinks of peach trees into the sky. But used speech balloons were tacky in the river, and water birds had liftoff as at a repeal of gravity. There was a public service conference once, and the leader of it told me that was the most fun, the most sense that had been talked the whole week. The Moon Man. Shadowy kangaroos moved off as we drove into the top paddock, coming home from a wedding under a midnightish curd sky. Then his full face cleared, Moon Man, the first birth ever, who still massages his mother and sends her light, for his having been born fully grown. His brilliance is in our blood. Had Earth fully healed from that labour, no small births could have happened. And a very short poem called Visitor. He knocks at the door and listens to his heart approaching. Jellyfish, globe, 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 soft glass bowls upside down over serves of nutty udder and teats under the surface of the sun. I think the only political poem I'll wish upon you tonight, I hardly write them at all now. The poisons of left and right. You are what you have got, and to love you have to hate. Two ideas that have killed and maimed holocausts and myriads. Filling into form, the simple man asks his mother, "Mum, what sex are we?" The best love poems are known as such to the lovers alone. Death from exposure. This was a woman who died of depression. She was a colleague of my wife's in teaching. Death from exposure. That winter, we missed her stark face at work, days till she was found under his veranda. Even student torturers used to go in awe. She had zero small talk. It made no sense she had his key. It made no sense all she could have done. Depression exhausts the mind. She phones, no response. She drives up straight to his place in the mountains, down a side road, frost all day. You knock, what next? You can't manage, what next? Back at last he finds her car. She's crawled in under, among the firewood. Quite often the world is not round. Church. The wish to be right has decamped in large numbers, but some come to God in hopes of being wrong. High on the end wall hangs the gospel from before he was booked. All judging ends in his fix, all including his own. He rose out of Jewish, not English evolution, and he said the lamp he held aloft to all nations was Jewish. Freedom still eats freedom. Justice eats justice. Love, even love. One retarded man said, "Church makes me want to be naughty." But naked in a muddy trench with many thousands, someone saying, "The true God gives his flesh and blood. Idols demand yours off you." Pastoral sketch. The next paddock to ours up home is a foaling paddock. Mares and their tiny horses. They're little rocking horses, as my wife called them, are often seen in that paddock. Pastoral sketch. The sex of a stallion at rest bulges in subtle fine rehearsal, and his progeny drop in the grass like little loose bagpipes. Wet nap and knotty drones, they lie glazing and learning air. Then they lever upright, wobbling, narrow as 2 dimensions. They nuzzle their mother's groin for the yogurt that makes girth. I'll finish this one with a Sydney Harbour poem. Port Jackson, Greaseproof Rose. Which spawned more civilizations, yellow grass or green? Who made poverty legal? Who made poverty at all? Eating a cold pork sandwich out of greaseproof paper as I crossed the circular quay, where the world ships landed poverty on the last human continent where it had not been known. Linked men straddling their chains, being laughed at by naked people. This belongs to my midlife. Out of my then suburban city rise towers of two main kinds. New glass ones keyed high to catch money, and brown steeples to forgive the poor, who made poverty illegal and were sentenced here for it. The naked here were shot for it. The first jumbo jets descend like mates whose names you won't recall, going down behind the city. I think that'll do for that book. Whoop. I'll read you some poems from a book that doesn't exist yet. It'll come out, I suppose, next year.
Les, do you mind if I tell you how much delight those poems have given me and I suspect others?
Oh, thank you.
Each one seems to come with a grain of soil attached to it. And that soil sits in my mouth and wants to know more. So I guess I have to buy the book. Thank you.
Well, that's what we kind of hope. I learned a meaning for soil today in the Herald. I'd never seen this meaning. I was going to give it to Sue for the dictionary. Sort of the larger elements of a dish in a really classy restaurant, sometimes placed on what's called soil. It's various kinds of ingredients that have been ground up to a powder and mixed together, and they form like a soil, which these larger things, they say duck on a soil of, what would you say, olives, pistachios. And I thought, hey, that's a use of the word soil I've never seen. Is that in the dictionary yet?
No, it isn't.
That's how we do the Macquarie dictionary. Yeah, this poem is, I went, when the last drought, the big drought broke, I went to have a look at the mouth of the Murray River to see what it looked like full. Inspecting the river mouth, drove up to Harndorf, boiled lamb hock, great scoff. Lamplit rain incessant. Next morning to the Murray mouth, reed-wrapped bottlings of view, Grigio and Verdelho. Saw careers from the climbing bridge, the steel houses it through all over Hindmarsh Island. The barrage de richesse, film culture, horseradish farms, steamboats netting Heron Blue Lake, the river full again. Upstream the iron cattle bridges. So, then 1,000 miles home across green lawn. The canonisation, Rome, 17th of October 2010. 17th of October is my birthday. Mary MacKillop, born 1842. What are the clergy giving you on my birthday, Mother Mary? Sainthood, so long after God did. Independence, but you're your own Scot. The job of Australian icon? Well, yes. Black flies in the buggy, bush pianos, the cheek sawing wimple in summer. You did do local penance. Your vow to educate poor children, might you now say, to heal the education of poor children? Who says a woman can't rise in the church? Mother Mary, awake in heaven, pray for us. When I first came here in 1957, which could be a while ago, it was 2% of people who graduated in from the high schools actually went on to tertiary education. So we were the great rush of that started of increase of studies started when I came here too. And now I think it's 25% of those who go through the matriculation get to some kind of tertiary study. So this is called When 2% Were Students. Oh, and back in those days, as you'll probably remember, some of you'll remember, a lot of the people, when they came down from the bush to study, stayed with suburban couples as boarders, and were often disliked, you know. I don't think there's much of that anymore. That has died out. When 2% were students, gorgeous expansion of life all day at the university. Then home to be late for meals. Start again. Gorgeous expansion of life all day at the university. Then home to be late for meals, an impractical, unwanted boarder. When rush hours were so tough, a heart attack might get stepped over. You looked up from the long footpaths to partings in the house's iron hair. Hosts of depression time and wartime hated their failure, which was you. Widows with no facelift of joy spat their irons. Shamed by bookishness, you puzzled their downcast sons who thought you might be a pufter. So you'd hitchhike home to run wild again, where cows made vaccine and ancient cows discovered aspirin. Up home where your father and you still wore pink from the housework you taught each other years before. And those were the years when farm wives drove to the coast with milk hands to gut fish because government no longer trusted poor voters on poor lands. The girl who taught me to walk, she was 11 years older than me, she died last year. Fine woman, but she had a habit of losing fingers. She lost a few in her lifetime. First two were one day my cousin Octopus, a brute, chopped them off with a tomahawk. And she kept one of them and they actually stuck it back on and it grew. But the poem is called Child Logic. The smallest girl in the Wild Kids gang submitted her finger to his tomahawk idea. It hurt bad, dropping off. He knew he'd gone too far and ran, herding the others. Later on, he'd maim her brother. She stayed in the bush till sundown, wrote in blood on the logs and gripped her gapped hand, afraid what her family would say to waste of a finger. Carelessness, mad kids. She had done wrong some way. Flood time night shelter. No mattress for the last levee shoveler. Estates of damp clothing rather, and groceries and crises on the netball squeaked floor within sidelong of the river. Rope curtain to let underpants be shed. Mulch of blankets half dry, and how to keep 4 cushions in line under back with clay and shift off, as of islands in continental drift off. Discreet knees up for sex or to check the infiltrating depth of water. Far off houses colliding in mainstream. These were many nights of that year. Powder of light. Hunched in the farm ute, tarpaulin against wind, the moon chasing treetops as the yellows hit a night, us going to the pictures by the State Forest Way, my mate's brother driving. We're at the age that has since slipped down towards toddlers, for whom adults and dreams mostly have no names yet. What wagged on screen then, made from powder of light, were people in music who did and said dressy stuff in English or American, kissed slow with faces crossed, flicked small to big in an instant, then were back in Australia. We believed it was Australia. Then our driver, who never attended films, would surface from courting and collect us there way before TV. And people, some holding phones like face cards, still ask, good movie? Who was in it? I smile and say, actors, but really now hired out of the air. I still don't know who they are. I believe who they say they are, you know. English is a second language. My wife used to teach that subject. Wonderful subject. She enjoyed it now. And she said, I'm an old wog myself, are you? You can believe me. And they said, you're not wog, miss. And anyhow, we were talking about it one day coming down a mountain from a place called at my age, this happens to you. You get stuck on a word sometimes. Comboyne, yeah. English is a second language. A coffee cart was travelling down the mountainside. The yellow shape of an ice cream coupe had travelled, a cappuccino on wheels. And we followed, speaking of this American teenager who was sent to remedial English since he spoke more Tagalog. An American in remedial? His military parents had been deep in the Asian preoccupation. When he came back on a visit, it was in the splendid blues of their Marine Corps, wowing all the teachers. We recalled the Australian boy who comprehended nothing much, till his mother called in to help, was heard talking fluently with him in a baby talk they had never abandoned. They were off a farm deeper in the mountains. A bit like the Georgian who sat in the back of his class for one whole year getting no English, substituting his fist for it till he was a state champ. Unlike the Hong Kong boy who returned to class with slim briefcase and pinstripe, having successfully saved $1 million of family investments in court before lunchtime recess. They rise up from then, widow and camel driver, now 45s and 50s, whom the teacher taught to prepare and cook their halal pilaf. They breakdanced for her after midday prayers and spoke of a friend sniped with an AK gun who vanished in red spray at his brother's shoulder. It was a time of teenagers coaxed to go back to such boulevards, and of helicopters, but, that sent boys scrambling into their chair tunnels. And we drove on down at just the speed which made our tyres buzz like the small wheels of a bed that would divide us. I haven't got time to read this one. This was a real scare. High-speed trap space. Speeding home from town in rainy dark. For the narrowness of main roads then we were hurtling. A lorry on our tail, bouncing, lit our mirrors. Twin strawberries kept our lights down. With our highway zone was walled in froth-barked trees. Nowhere to swerve. But out between trunks stepped an animal. Big neck, muzzle and horns, calmly gazing at the play of speed on counter speed. Its front hooves up, planted on the asphalt, and our little room raced on to a beheading, or else to be swallowed up by the truck's high bow. No dive down off my seat would get me low enough to escape the crane swing of that head and its imminence of butchery and glass. But it was gone. The monster jaw must have recoiled in one gulp to give me my survival. My brain was still full of the blubber lip, the dribbling cud. In all but reality, the bomb stroke had still happened. Ghost glass and blurts of rain still showered out of my face, as the man whose straining grip had to refuse all swerving. Diabetica. A man coughs like a box and turns on yellow light to follow his bladder out over the gunnel of his bed. He yawns upright, trying not to dot the floor with little advanced peas. The clock on the nightstand biting off an hour he hates. Sugar, the sick caterer, managed with unzipping needles, blood syrup, shortener of legs. Ichor of the bishop whose name is on a school because he could not beget. Like many milk-blind scholars and farmers short of breath, above billions in sweet graves. Something's coming to the boil. The privacy of typewriters. I'm an old book troglodyte, one who composes on paper and types up the result. as many times as need be. The computer scares me. Its crashes and codes, its links with spies and gunshot, its text that looks pre-published, perhaps has been. I don't know who's reading what I write on a carriage that doesn't move or ding. I trust the spore of botch, whiteouts where thought deepened, wise freedom from spell check, sheets that sell to the National Library. I fear the law of that baleful misstruck key that fills the whiskered screen with a writhe of child pornography, and the doors smashing in and the cops handcuffing me to a grislier video culture, Coraline in an ever colder sea.
Les.
There's neurosis for you. I keep turning to these people and those
That's right,
people.
they'll have to miss out. I should keep up with that.
The glory and decline of bread. Sliced bread, thick, a centimetre thick, staling on 40 surfaces, fit for soggy sandwiches. Real bread excels all this. High top Vienna, Cobb, baguettes 3 times daily, breads poignant as a sob, Jewish rye and German brothers from the hob. Tall grass waving gluten foreshadowed cultivation. Its unbloody skin oil scent displaced the hunting tent for prayer and work in season. Rice eaters do not yet disdain all meals centering on one grain, but potatoes came and pasta and boy meat from old master, and bread put butter on the hearth. The idols felt would dine apart, once designer chefs had risen. Bread turns to landfill on the shelf, or like salt gets smuggled in to sit below itself. Eating from the dictionary. This book, for some reason, has got more food poems in it than any other. Sooner or later it had to happen. Eating from the dictionary. Plucked chook we call poultry or fowl, a meat rare in our kitchens, crepe skin for festivity or medicine. As chooks alive, they were placid donors of eggs and mild music. Purchase and dark gave them sleep. Then came the false immigration of millions crying in tin hell ships, warmed all night by shit-haloed bulbs. The coarser species, renamed chicken, were fresh meat from mouths too long corned. Valleys south of ours deigned to farm them. When our few silver-penciled Wyandottes went down with a mystery plague, their heads trailing back on their wings, no vet could diagnose them. Chickens don't live long enough to get sick, laughed battery keepers. Much later, when all our birds were dead, a boy of 11 who kept name bred said they had suffered spinal worm. And was there a cure? Sure. Garlic in their drinking water. He named a small ration per year. His parents vouched for him. No need. We'd seen his small flock and the trust that tottered round him on zinc feet. This one's from Coogee, a denizen. The octopus is dead who lived in Wiley's baths, below the circus balustrade and the chopped sea tiles. Old leisure domain of 8 died of too much chlorine applied to purify the amenities of urine and algal slippage. Favourite of chivying children, the one who could conform its elastics with any current or hang from its cupped feet, now lies slop biltong, beak and extinct pasta, out in the throwaway tide, and will leave with the wobbegong. Vertigo. Last time I fell in a shower room, I bled like a tumbril dandy, and the hotel longed to be rid of me. Taken to the town clinic, I described how I tripped on a steel rim and found my head in the wardrobe. Scalp sewn and knotted and flagged, I thanked the Frau Doctor and fled, wishing the grab bar of age might be bolted to all civilization. I'm thinking of Rome's 8th hill heaped up out of broken amphorae. When any time after 60 or any time before you stumble over the stairs and club your forehead on rake or hoe, bricks or fuel drums, that's time to call the purveyor of steel pipe and indoor railings. And soon you'll be gasping up landings, having left your balance in the car, from which, please God, you'll never see the launchway of tyres off a brink. Later comes the sunny day when street detail whitens blindly to mauve, and people hurry you, or wait, quiet. Bread again. The staff of life has become the lunch of staff. Beasts of the city. Pioneers shot their dinners and their fears. Gentry were red in stag and boar, shooting hippo for the roar, turning tall giraffes to rissoles, shredding buffalo with missiles. But as true wilderness prey ran down, the hunt went sour, and in town people talked scarcity and compassion. As wild things sank, they urbanised, was tardily realised. Commerce in circus beasts degraded, but charismatic fauna was still traded. Tigers de-sinewed or whip-snated. Orangs and howlers got sold with their forests. Infective flying foxes bred like tourists. And golf course rooster and kangaroo fattened the crocodile they drew. Children, abandoning outdoors for towers, spent glass-in hours fighting anime intestine, jagged tooth of maw and spine, and things that drove the theory of revolution back on itself to its dissolution. Never read that one before, so that's why I made a mess of it. This is a sad poem. Remember that high school in Colorado where two students who'd been badly bullied shot a dozen or so of their fellow students. It sort of followed me around, this poem, until I wrote it. The Massacre. The high school echoes with gunshot and deadly interviews held beside chairs by black-coated boys who will not survive their own vengeance. Despite odd releases, you never bad-mouthed this man, so run for it. As the cops arrive, afraid to go in, and parents who scream to go in, a celibate passerby divines, we're shooting back now. I'll finish up with this poem. I'm still not sure. It's a fortnight old. And I'm not sure whether to call it aged care or the care. It's called the care at the moment, but it could be aged care. Gradually it'll tell me what it wants. Poems will always inform you of their needs eventually. Carers are 15 years younger than you. They stop in for your boy. They shower your mother not looking. They unpeg and bring in the laundry. Carers have learned the bad smelling jobs and soak them as they chat. Brown pivot stains, shame a veteran. Old age is eventually a cat which starts on the brain of its prey. So the words come with a delay and finally hardly at all. Children, years younger again, know the nuance of the words, the scratchy pants and the Latin. Grown-ups twist as the modern approaches down gravel, down the flight plan. The airy and the arch, the judgmental in starch. Ampoule brisk as their hatches open. More friends of mine now face that one. So, glory to Nurse Cavell, to Nurse Kenny, Dr. Flynn and the sans frontiersman. I brace for my turn of the white cottons, and my headstone, poet so far, then.